almost 2 months ago now, I released my Tackling Your Backlog video, which I'm just saying, if you want to go check it out before this video, it might not be a bad idea for a little bit of context, just saying. And so at the end of that video, I asked if people would be interested in maybe getting a few like little mini reviews of the games that I complete over the year, and the answer was pretty positive, so we're doing it. I'm honestly really kind of nervous about it. Like, I figured I would end up doing reviews on the channel, but still the fact that this is like my first official review, it's kind of scary, but I'm really excited. And for the long-awaited first review of the first game that I completed in 2023, we have Xenoblade Chronicles 3. This was a journey, my friends. This was a journey. So one of the reasons I picked Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as the very first game of my backlog, the first game I wanted to complete in 2023, I love the first Xenoblade Chronicles game. I have just this absolute love. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I will never forget discovering the game for the first time and then going on a massive hunt to find a copy for it on the Wii after they had done a reprint of it, I think in like early 2014 or something like that, and immediately just falling in love with the game, falling in love with the characters, the world, the music, everything. Absolutely everything about Xenoblade Chronicles. And so when they announced Xenoblade Chronicles 2 coming out on the Switch, I was overjoyed until I wasn't. Which, if you've been around on the channel for long enough, you've probably heard some of my thoughts on Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I do admit I have not finished the game. I have not finished Xenoblade Chronicles 2. However, I want to go back to it even more so after playing 3. But so when they announced Xenoblade Chronicles 3 at the February Direct last year, I was overjoyed, absolutely overjoyed, because I was hoping that it would be more like Xenoblade Chronicles 1, but still maintaining some of the things that I did enjoy from my little bit of playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2. But I was also really, really nervous. I wasn't sure how it was gonna be. I was scared of the time commitment. I really just was uncertain of what direction Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was gonna fall. Was it gonna live up to 1, or was it going to kind of disappoint me like 2? I actually was gone when the game released. I was teaching a band camp, and then I went on a camping trip with friends, so I missed picking it up. My mom had to go pick up my pre-order from GameStop, and then I didn't get to it for many, many months. I was still playing Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes at that point in time, as well as a few other games, and I was just so scared of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Despite the amazing things I had heard about the game, I was really scared because I didn't know if I was going to like it or dislike it. And so I made it my mission that I was going to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and that was going to be my first game of 2023. Literally, I think I started it New Year's Day, or like the day after New Year's, like something like that. It was very instantaneous. And I am in love with this game. I'm absolutely in love with this game, and I am so happy and thrilled that this was the first game that I decided to play in 2023. And frankly, I'm honestly glad that I didn't get to play it right away, because I feel like I would have been wrapped up in the hype. I was already nervous when the game came out. I feel like if I had given into the pressure to play the game when it first released, I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much. I was really able to take my time with it, explore everything that I wanted to explore, and really take in the story, which, perfect segue, that's what we're gonna talk about first. So 2 things before getting into the story. This is a no spoiler review, so I'm not going to reveal any big story points. We're going to talk mainly about the beginning and kind of what the story is setting up to be right at the beginning. Second, a lot of people are probably wondering this. Can you play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 without playing 1 or 2? And while I have seen varying people's responses on this, my personal opinion is no, you don't have to play the other 2. However, there are going to be things that you will miss out on in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that might not have nearly as big of an impact on your experience had you played the first 2 games. However, as somebody who had played all the way through the first one multiple times, only began Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and have not played Torna, 3 still made sense, and it was still an absolutely emotional experience. So it's really up to your own interpretation. However, I know a lot of people that started with 3 and they still had an incredible time. So it's really up to what you're thinking, but no, you don't have to. So the story begins amidst a battle in a never-ending war between the nations of Kevis and Agnes. Every person's lifespan is only 10 years, and throughout those entire 10 years, they are destined to fight in order to stay alive. They must continue to fight one another in order to fill their colony's flame clock. a dial that shows how much life force people in the colony have. If they are able to stay alive long enough to make it to the end of their 10-year lifespan, they attend what is called homecoming, where their soul is sent off and basically goes back to the Xenoblade equivalent of heaven. We then begin to follow Noah, an off-seer whose job it is to send off the departed, and his friends Uni and Lance, and also the adorable Nappan, Riku. Soon enough, they're called in for another mission, but this time it's to track an unknown force carrying something of great importance. Once Noah and the rest of the Special Forces unit get to the specified location, they are met with the Special Forces group from Agnes, Off-Seer Mio, Taion, and Senna, as well as another Nappan companion, Manana. After needing to team up in order to take down a huge, unknown presence named Mobius, the group is deemed as a threat to the world. They are told the only thing they can do is join together and make their way to the city in order to discover the truth of this world and how they can change it. I found the introductory cutscene really doesn't drag its feet in setting up the story, and that pace continues throughout the rest of the game as well. I found the story incredibly well paced. At the beginning, it gave you just enough time to really get to know the characters and their individual hardships, as well as begin to get attached. And as the story continues to unfold, you really get hit hard with the emotions in some of the later chapters of the games. Speaking of the characters, I honestly really loved all of them. I love this cast of characters. They are a little bit tropey, but not too tropey, but they're all interesting in their own way, and they're all just kind of fun too. I think the biggest thing that draws me in though is they vibe really, really well together. Something that I see in a lot of games is you have really good characters individually, but when they don't mesh with the group that they're placed in, it can really throw off the entire feeling of the game. I felt that this cast really just vibed well together. You could see how they grew together as a group as well as individually, and that just really also continued to just keep me in. So by the end of the game, when I was getting ready to turn it off, it really felt like I was saying goodbye to a group of friends that I had gotten to know throughout the entire course of this story. Plus, I also think the circumstances of the cast are really interesting as well. You have 3 people from one side of the war and 3 people from the other side of the war. So there's absolutely conflict happening at the beginning, but as the characters come to understand more and more about one another and realize that they're not so different, that's when they really expand and grow. You learn about each character's individual hardships, and you see how the other characters in the group relate to those hardships in their own way. So by the end of it, you just have this wonderful group of friends, and I love it. I love them so much. There's also just even little moments where they're together by the campfire at the campsite, just hanging out, doing little things like Noah and Mio will play their flutes together, or Senna and Lance will be just working out. It's so cute, and I just love all of them. For those wondering, my favorite character is Uni. I just think she's really funny and also just very spunky, very just awesome. I love her a lot. Honestly, if I had to pick one complaint about the entirety of the story and the characters, which is really such a minimal complaint, I just wish there was a little more romance. Just a little bit. There is some that I'm not going to get into, and there are very obvious ships that I think the developers were trying to get you to go towards, but I just wish there was a little bit more overall. Not saying there's anything wrong with just all of them remaining friends, it's just there were parts of the story that were very obviously leading in that direction that didn't necessarily get wrapped up, but I think a lot of it was also to leave it up to the player interpretation. So it's something I have mixed feelings on, but also my ships, they must sail. All right, so now we're gonna swap over to gameplay, which I feel like when people are looking at the Xenoblade Chronicles series for the first time, this is probably the most intimidating thing, except maybe minus the time commitment. But Xenoblade battle systems, there's a lot to learn, and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is no exception. So let me give you the little rundown on how this game works. So as you wander around the world, depending on your level, enemies within your level range or higher will come and attack you. Your characters will auto-attack. However, you also have what are called arts, which are much stronger than your auto-attacks, as well as can perform specific actions such as breaking an enemy, giving the party a buff, etc. Several arts are also more effective depending on where you are in location to the enemy. Above your arts, there are 2 little icons, one indicating your position to the targeted enemy and the other indicating that you're in an auto-attack range. Both can be really helpful little resources, as when you have 6+ characters on the screen, as well as any number of energies, things can get really hectic. Which this is one thing that if you get overwhelmed easily, this might be something that is a little bit weird to you. My mom tried to play the first Xenoblade Chronicles game and she just could not. she couldn't hang. She couldn't hang with the battle system, and that was even with less characters. So if that's something you're not used to, this might be something that would bug you. So going back to the arts, you have several kinds that vary depending on your character's class, which we'll get a little bit more on that later, as well as master arts that are arts taken from other classes. Arts can have specific requirements in order for them to recharge. If your character's class hails from Kevis, arts refill over time, but if your character's class comes from Agnes, arts will recharge by auto-attacking. If you're able to have arts from both sides recharged at the same time, you're able to perform what are called fusion attacks, which grant you the effects of both attacks combined. You also have talent arts, which are even stronger attacks. Those refill by performing what are called role actions. So there are 3 different roles in this game. 1, attacker, which attacks. 2, defender, which defends. And 3, healer, which, you guessed it, heals. They're pretty self-explanatory. And each of those roles have their specific strengths and weaknesses, as well as things that they can do to perform in battle in order to fill up their talent gauge. And so this is the thing that's unique to Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and that's called interlinking. You have your interlink gauge, which once filled allows you to combine with another specified character, which allows you to become this like huge monster being and deal a lot of damage. There are differing levels to this gauge, going from 0 to 3, so if you perform enough fusion arts to max it out to 3, you will be doing so much damage. And finally, we have chain attacks, which are a staple in this series. These freeze the battle and allow your party to team up and cause a barrage of damage to an enemy. Chain attacks are executed by completing orders given by various party members, which, when completed, give buffs to the party or debuffs to the enemy, either during the chain attack or after the chain attack has ended. In order to successfully complete orders, you have to get your TP, or tactical points gauge, at or past 100%. Going back to role actions, each role has a different thing that they can do during a chain attack. For example, healers can stop the TP gauge at 99%, allowing you to throw another character on top in order to get you a guaranteed completed order. Unless you're only left with healers, then you're screwed. Depending on how well you do in a chain attack, a certain number of party members will reactivate for another go. There are a lot of different strategies to use during chain attacks, and it can be a lot, but after going through it a few times, you really figure it out. There are also Ouroboros attacks as well, so if you complete the orders of 2 people that have it interlinked together, you can do an Ouroboros attack. However, that does end the chain attack. Conversely, you can also start a chain attack if 2 characters are interlinked at level 3, then you will begin a chain attack with an Ouroboros attack, and then another one, which is honestly pretty cool. So ultimately, this is a lot of battle information to keep straight. But one thing that I can confidently say is once you get into the game and really start doing a few battles, you begin to kind of see the ins and outs of the battle system, and it becomes really, really satisfying in order to rack up combos, play really, really well. It's really, really nice. I also find the UI on the screen to be really, really sleek to look at, so it doesn't really get in the way of the battle, which is really, really, really appreciative. Between the 3 games that I've played, I do think the combat in 3 is my favorite. It just felt so successful to be doing constant chain attacks, just racking up all the fusion arts, all of that stuff. It felt so nice. And the combat never got boring for me. I think a common thing with like different RPGs is that eventually the combat gets boring, but in Xenoblade Chronicles 3, it never got boring for me. Ever. No matter what. It was always interesting, and I was honestly always excited to be doing the combat. The other thing about the UI while you're in a battle, it's really, really helpful. As I mentioned earlier, it can get really hectic when you have so many different characters on the screen that you really can lose your place as to where you are in the battle, what position you're in, etc. So to have all of those different markers, but not so obvious that if you don't need them, they're not in your way, it's really, really helpful. However, say you get into the game and you find that it's a little bit too difficult for you, or you want to bump up the difficulty level, you can change the difficulty of the game at any time. At any time. I love when games add this in because it makes your whole experience more of your experience, if that makes sense. It allows you to explore and play the game at your own pace, and I think that's really, really good, especially for a game where there's so much exploring to do and so many things to see and so many battles to have. It's really helpful to have the ability to change your difficulty depending on what you're feeling. The other aspect of it that has to do with difficulty is bonus EXPs. So you'll get bonus EXP by doing various things like side quests, chatting with your party members at camp, etc. And when you're at specific campsites, you're able to give your characters bonus EXP. Now, one thing that I really wish they didn't do. So you're able to give your characters the bonus EXP at any time, but you can't take those levels away. So if you're still midway through your first playthrough and you're playing on hard and the game is still too easy for you, if you use your bonus EXP, you're going to become overleveled. You just will. But there's no way to bring it back because that's locked behind New Game Plus. That is one thing that I just wish they wouldn't have done, because there were plenty of moments where I would have dropped my level ASAP just to make the game a little bit harder for me. So another big aspect of the gameplay are collecting heroes and the class system. Throughout the story and from talking to your characters at camp, you have the opportunity to open up what are called hero quests, which end up being little gold icons on the map. By doing those, you're able to find optional 7th party members to add to your team, as well as gain the ability to gain their class. Each hero has a class inheritor who can start working on mastering that class right away. However, any character who did not immediately inherit it must battle with that hero in order to unlock it. This allows even more customization to the game, as you can build up your teams with any combination of classes and heroes. The other thing I really appreciate is if you don't use a hero for a while, they still level up along with the game and also will receive bonus EXP. So like, say you haven't used a hero for like a really long time and you find that you really need their class or really want their class, it's not a slog to try to train with them. They're not gonna die every 2 seconds because they're super underleveled. They are leveled with your team, which I think is so nice. And so mastering these different classes are how you get extra master arts for your primary party as well. Now, I will admit, I didn't optimize the class system nearly as much as I should have, mainly because I really liked having the characters in their original classes, just because story-wise it made a lot more sense to me. However, I appreciate the fact that the class system was there because I didn't know that it was going to be. I guess I never paid attention to the promotional material that said that it was going to be there. So it was a really big surprise and a really nice surprise too. Again, I'm just all for it when you have customization options in games. It makes your own playthrough really unique. Not to mention there are also just really cool classes to unlock, and the heroes, some of them are really freaking funny. I love them. So going back to hero quests, you're able to do them at any time in the story. However, if you've progressed past when it would make sense to meet these heroes in the story, there's gonna be a little bit of dialogue confusion. Like, you'll ultimately have heroes explaining things that you found out like a chapter or 2 ago, and the characters being wildly surprised, like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that before except for like 5 minutes ago. And so while I appreciate that you can do these and normal quests at any time, you're not locked out of anything because you moved on to another chapter, I do almost wish that they weren't as integral to parts of the story, so it didn't seem super out of place. It's one of those things that I have really mixed feelings on, because I love that the heroes really do play into the story a lot, but just sometimes it felt really, really, really out of place. But I know there's a lot of stuff here. Not only are there hero quests, there are also what are called ascension quests. So each class is capped at level 10 initially. However, by doing the individual heroes ascension quests, you're able to raise the level of that class up to level 20. So some of these are required by the story. However, for others, you really have to kind of backtrack to see if you've done enough things to trigger these or have done the right series of things. And that brings us to our next bigger category, the worlds, the art, and the music, which is my favorite category of them all. So there's a lot to see. It's no surprise that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 follows in its predecessor's footsteps of having these massive, gorgeous open worlds. And this world isn't empty either. As I mentioned before, there are hero quests, but there are also just normal side quests as well that help build up the colonies and other areas of the game. So I'm not somebody that really enjoys doing too many side quests, but there were so many in Xenoblade Chronicles 3 that sucked me in right immediately. And again, I was so involved with the characters, I just wanted everybody to be happy. I just wanted everybody to be happy, so I felt like I had to do these side quests, and I really, really enjoyed most of them. Some of them are boring fetch quests, and others are really, really simple, very straightforward, but have a really, really nice payoff at the end. Not only that, but doing side quests also helps build up the relations between colonies immensely, which you can also do by talking to colony residents and completing little resource cards. Side quests can be found either by exploring the world or by talking with your characters at camp. So while I like that there are multiple ways to discover different quests, I find myself often forgetting to talk to my characters at the camp to activate these quests, or I might not always have this amount of information I need in order for them to talk and trigger the quest, and then I just forget about it. Also, talking about the camp, I found that some of the conversations between the characters to be a little little too boring, especially given how very deep and complex these characters are during the main story. In one way, it's nice to see them just chill and kind of take a break from the literally horrendous world they live in, but sometimes it just seemed like I was wasting my time. It made me miss the heart-to-hearts a lot, honestly, from Xenoblade Chronicles. Plus, it would have been a really cool thing to have more individualized conversations between characters as well. So it's no surprise that the landscapes in this game are absolutely gorgeous. From dusty deserts to beautiful cliffsides, Xenoblade 3 delivers with the same kind of sweeping landscape that the other games had as well. Not only that, but you can really get a feeling of the world torn by war. Throughout your journey, you'll find husks from both nations that Noah and Mio are able to send off. Doing this not only improves your relationship with the respective colonies, but it's just a small detail that really solidifies the way of the world and how it works. I also found that the colors of many of the areas were significantly more muted than the other two games, which, in a way, I found fit really, really well. And the characters look great as well. I really love all of their designs. Each character I found extremely unique in their design, even the ones that are slightly more tropey or reminiscent of previous characters. For example, Lance isn't just a reskinned Rhine despite having a very similar role to Rhine in the game. So music is one of my favorite and most important parts about any video game. For those of you who don't know, I'm actually a flute player. I went to school for music. I teach flute. I do all of the music stuff. So it's really, really important to me. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 absolutely delivers on the music front. And so maybe I'm being biased because, as I said, I'm a flutist, but there is so much flute in this soundtrack and it is incredible. Not only does it fit in with the story and Noah and Mio being offseers that play the flute, it's so integrated into the soundtrack that it's really honestly amazing. I mean, the flutes that they made for the soundtrack were handcrafted to get the exact sound that they wanted, which I love the attention to detail there. All that being said though, while I love the soundtrack, I feel like some of the music for some of the bigger areas can't compare to the previous game's kind of larger areas like Gara Plains or More Ardain. Like, those are really big songs that you hear and you recognize. I feel like the music in some of the bigger areas wasn't as memorable, but that doesn't mean they aren't good. One of my favorites is Xenoblade Plains, which is an area from really, really early on. But I think it sets the tone really, really well, especially coming off of the game's opening cutscenes. I think it matches the very beautiful but also somewhat muted location itself. These two things mesh really, really, really well together in this opening area, which is why this track stood out to me so much. But also the battle music, oh my gosh. So definitely my favorite song in the entire soundtrack is the Kevis battle theme. Honestly, it's been weeks since I finished the game. It's just taken me forever to get this video out. I have listened to that battle theme at least once a day ever since beating the game. I love it so much. Again, it goes to the flute. It's so fun. It's so exciting. I adore it. And of course, there are some really emotional songs as well, but because that gets into spoiler territory, you have to find that out for yourself. But just know the music alone made me cry in so many different spots. So in conclusion, I freaking loved Xenoblade Chronicles 3 so much, so much so that while I'm glad it was the first game I played in 2023, it's going to be really hard to compete with anything else. Like, it was so good. I also found that this game was exactly what I needed in the time that I played it. So for those of you who might not hang out on my Twitch channel, I talk a lot about my personal struggles with anxiety and depression. And typically the beginning of every year is really, really hard for me, this year being no exception. But throughout all of the tough stuff right at the beginning of the year, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, whose message is to not be afraid of change, continue to push forward, and take advantage of all of the time that we have on this planet, it was really what I needed in that moment. And for that reason alone, this game will always have a special place in my heart. So while there were a few minor issues, I wouldn't even call them issues. They were just things that I wish had been done a little bit differently. This game was fantastic, and I adored my time with Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I laughed, I cried, and then I cried some more. So this game was extremely impactful story-wise, and I loved everything else about it too. The characters, the music, the world, just everything, and it left me wanting more. I also found that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was much more approachable gameplay-wise than the previous 2 installments. So if you're thinking about picking it up, that might be something to think about as well. This game also still has DLC coming out for it. Wave 3 was just released this past Wednesday, which added a whole roguelike mini-game kind of thing, which is pretty cool, and then we still have Wave 4, which is story DLC. It looks like it's going to be a prequel story, but I'm personally also hoping for some sequel-like elements in it as well to tie up some of the loose ends left at the end of Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Ultimately, I finished this game, eyes super red from crying, with my heart full and just also wanting to see more and spend more time with these characters. So yay, I did my first ever review. I hope it was okay. I hope it was good. This game really meant a lot to me. And even though I'm not gonna do any kind of ranking like, oh, I'd give it a 10 out of 10, I really do recommend this game if you're interested in getting into the Xenoblade Chronicles series, or if you've played the others and you're wondering if 3 is worth your time. It is absolutely worth your time. So that is gonna do it for me and for our very first backlog review thing. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and comment down below telling me your thoughts on Xenoblade Chronicles 3 or if you're interested in picking it up. I will say, if this video gets enough likes, I will propel Xenoblade Chronicles 2 higher up on my backlog, so that way I can get a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 review out later to see if my mind has changed. Let's say like 50 likes? Let's try 50 likes. Part of me kind of wants to do it, but still I want to give incentive as well. And also, if you like what you're seeing here on the channel and you haven't already, it would really, really mean a lot to me if you subscribed. We have lots of exciting things coming, more reviews, of course, as I continue to complete more games. Fire Emblem Engage will be next, and I'm really excited for that because I think it's going to be a little bit of a different review than this one, but we'll see. We'll see. But I also do lots of other things, just talking about games, Switch accessories, what have you. I have so many new videos coming out soon that are going to be very new to the channel, and I'm really excited, so I hope you'll stick around. But that's gonna do it for me. Until the next one, goodbye!